So what's on plan for the winery today?
Well, today we just finalized our blend for our estate Pinot Noir from the 19 vintage. So it's really critical for us to finalize that, empty the barrels and the cellar to get it in bottle before the incoming Pinot Noir starts this year. Um, we were a little lucky in that it's been a pretty normal year, so we have a little bit more time compared to some of the earlier harvests we've had, which has certainly helped with some of the delays we've had during COVID. So, but blending is not normal right now.
Yeah, for sure. You can't get as much of a team together, I'd imagine.
Yeah, we've done a few blends over Zoom, but for the most part now we are back digging into the barrels, just spaced out in the winery. But it is hard to still have the collaborative effort and get everyone's palates and opinions in before the decisions need to be made.
Yeah, for sure. I can't even imagine. I mean, making a wine, it takes a village. It takes a whole team, and definitely has to be one of the challenges. So and I know we were discussing the other day, there were some protocols for COVID as far as the harvest coming up. Talk about that just for a moment.
Yeah, it's been something that we're watching and learning from other regions that have harvested, the Southern Hemisphere harvest during, the middle or the start of this outbreak. So
Wow.
we've taken a lot of lessons from New Zealand and Australia, but also California. That's starting this week for some sparkling wines. And I mean, I think the thing is we are really committed to not having any overlapping shifts. So to make sure we're reducing the risk of one of our winemakers going down, Joe, Gabby, myself, we're making sure that we're never overlapping, so that in case someone were to fall ill, that the other person could kind of step in and run that crew. Because when the grapes are ready, they're ready. And if you miss that window by even a day or two, it really, that picking decision is final for the rest of that wine's life, and there's no going back. So it is something where we're trying the best we can by, staying safe and keeping the facility clean. Also using a lot of UV light to clean the space. We have some special coatings on our equipment that kill bacteria and viruses when it hits. Just
Cool.
things our winery as a whole is doing for the facilities here. That's going to hopefully make it easier.
Yeah, we're going to get back to UV light because when we start talking about vineyards in a few, I want to mention that because you guys are doing some cool testing with UV that I don't think anyone's ever done before. So, but let's get to it. So, for those of us just joining, we're speaking today with Christine Clair. She's the director of Willamette Valley Vineyards in Oregon. They're really the most iconic and recognized producers within Oregon. So it's an honor to have you, and thank you. I know it's a busy time of year. Thank you for taking the time for us today.
Oh yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. My first Instagram Live.
Oh, see, so it's groundbreaking here. So for those just joining, and just to give everyone a good frame of reference of where you're located, we're within Oregon, so Pacific Northwest. And we're in the turquoise area in the northwest there. So that's the Willamette Valley. And if we zoom into the Willamette Valley, you can see broken into several different sub-appellations and AVAs. Just south of Salem is where the main estate is located. They have several different vineyard sites, but the main estate is right there. And we can get into it here in a few, but there's several different locations here. So that's a good point to start. So Christine, why don't you give us a bit of history of the winery, where it started, and then your role, and then how you became involved with the estate.
Sure. Yeah, Willamette Valley Vineyards was started by our founder, Jim Bruneau, back in 1983. Jim was the first native Oregonian to start a winery. So prior to that, we call them California refugees that came up to Oregon looking for a cooler climate to grow that grape that they were so passionate about, Pinot Noir. And Jim was very, very helpful to a lot of those early Oregon pioneers because he actually worked as a lobbyist and helped start the Oregon Wine Growers Association and get funding for research and marketing for our industry. And it was through those relationships and working with those early winemakers that they encouraged him to go out and plant his own vines. Many were helpful in finding this site that I'm sitting at here today, our estate vineyard and winery. It's in the photo right there. And what's so unique about this site is really the elevation is what they really honed in on here. So the elevation's 500 to 750 feet elevation, which is the same elevation as the Grand Cru vineyards in Burgundy. And where Jim had done some education and training. And so the things that he was looking for was things that would be well suited to Pinot Noir. So it is a higher elevation site in the Willamette Valley, certainly very, very helpful to us as the vintages are getting warmer and our weather is getting warmer here to maintain that classic elegant style. But also our soils, we are a volcanic clay-based soil. And so they're very water retentive, allowing us to dry farm, which in the Willamette Valley is the way in which most of our vineyards sustain themselves. Is we get so much rain during the off season, and these clay-based soils hold on to that moisture so well that our vines are able to sustain themselves really from June all the way until October in almost drought-like conditions. We really don't get a lot of rainfall in the summertime. Huh. And so he planted his vines, and by the time he was ready to build a winery, you know, he really didn't come from any means. He was already working 3 jobs to purchase the property, and that's when he had the idea of inviting the community to become owners in the winery. And so he took small investments. The average was around $1,500, and it started with just around 2,000 people that believed in him. And now today we have over 16,000 winery owners spread across the United States that just really help our winery. They give us that foundation and that capital resource to continue to plant estate vineyards and innovate and make beautiful wines. But they also, drink those wines. And so it really is this great relationship, and it's allowed our winery really to be able to grow.
Oh, it's so cool. And I want to mention that your winery is traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, so back when Jim was looking into how to legally take these small investments from consumers, there wasn't that vehicle that's now considered crowdfunding. Right. And so the way he did it was through a public stock offering, and he had to learn how to he had to become and take the Series 7 to learn about all these investments, as he was a lobbyist and farmer at that time. And he also, though, wanted to make it a serious investment where people could be able to get out of their investment when they needed to. And so that the NASDAQ listing really does provide that liquidity option. And it's something where it's really fun for my friends and family to be able to buy a few shares here and there. And, then, of course, they act like they're my boss.
That's really funny. It's such a cool concept, though. I don't know why more wineries haven't done it, because, like you said, it gives you the capital, it gives you the funding. It's such a innovative concept. So tell us how you became involved with the estate. I know there's some history there, and I know that the estate that you're there was actually kind of your backyard growing up.
Right. I know. I kind of consider myself the neighbor girl that hasn't gone away, hasn't moved away. And I also kind of like to joke with Jim a little bit that I've been doing business on the property about as long as he has. So I grew up at a house just at the base of the vineyard here. And these were early days where there weren't many vineyards in Oregon. I certainly had never seen a vineyard in my life. And it was just really curiosity when I saw cars driving up the gravel entrance one weekend, that I followed them up and just to see what was going on. And I discovered that was when they were opening the tasting room. So I went back home, and instead of doing the lemonade stand and selling lemonade to the people driving by, I decided to take my friendship bracelets up to the parking lot. and I tried to sell them to those first visitors in the tasting room. So ever since that time, I've just had a great connection here. I babysat Jim's daughter as she was growing up, and then I came to be an intern here in college. And I have left. I went away and started my own wine brand, but just the calling to come back and to be able to be part of Jim's succession plan here at the winery so that we're able to continue to support our people, and it allows him a way where he doesn't have to sell the business to keep it going. So that's something that I feel, just a deep responsibility to do with my life.
No, it's so cool, and it's it's great for you and for Jim that you have that that long-term connection as well. It's so cool. Let's talk about some of your vineyard holdings. So you have the estate there. How large is that original estate vineyard?
Yeah, so we have just over 80 acres planted here with Pinot Noir, Jim's first plantings from his Pinot block back in 1983. And then we've expanded it to include the Dijon clones of Chardonnay when they were made available to Oregonians. They were a gift from the Burgundy. So we have some of those original vines that came in. And then we also have Pinot Gris as one of Oregon's signature white wines. And that's here just south of Salem. And then it was really just a few years after Jim got started where he merged with Touton Vineyards, which is our most northern, and one of the most northern vineyards in the Willamette Valley. It sits in a brand new appellation called the Tualatin Hills AVA, which is a very, very striking terroir and very different from most of the sub-appellations in that its soil is actually a laurel wood soil, which is it's a fine dust soil that was created by kind of glacier deposits. And that's our Tualatin estate that was planted back in 1973. Then here is a photo of our Elton Vineyard. This was planted in the same year that Jim planted our estate here in 1983. This is in the Eola Hills AVA and was planted by two school teachers and educators actually that spent their evenings and weekends farming. And by the time they were looking to slow down in their lives, they selected Willamette Valley Vineyards to be their succession plan. And so those are our three main estate vineyards. But recently, we've been able to plant our Ingram Estate Vineyard, which sits over Elton Vineyards, also our Brno Estate in the Dundee Hills, and recently the Loaiza Vineyard, which isn't even on here yet, is also in the new Tualatin Estate or Tualatin Hills AVA. And that vineyard is dedicated to the Loaiza family who have been farming our vineyards now for over 40 years. And their Hispanic heritage is really something that we want to celebrate with that vineyard and all the contributions that their community has made and makes possible in the farming of our wine grapes and making of our wines.
Oh, it's so cool.
So it's been a busy time of vineyard planting.
Yeah, exactly. You guys don't slow down, that's for sure. It always seems nonstop, and every time we talk to you, it's always a new development, and it's exciting because there's always new things on the horizon. So let's talk about the vineyards a little bit, and I want to talk just about. We're not going to be able to cover them all. I'd love to. I think you have over, I don't even know, 12 or 15 different ecological, sustainable initiatives, but this one just pops out at me just because it's so cool and we don't see it often. So talk about the Raptor program.
Yeah, so with our sustainable practices, we don't use any herbicides and pesticides in our vineyard, but we do look for natural ways to protect them. And so back in 2011, we partnered with the Cascades Raptor Center, which is just about an hour south of our location down in Eugene. And we had volunteers build these cute little, we call them owl condos, Raptor condos. And they build these and they put them, we probably have 30 or 40 spread across our estate vineyards at this point. And each summer we release new owls and kestrels into the vineyard for that natural pest protection. So really going after the voles and the small rodents that can kind of eat away at the roots of the vines and become quite problematic. And also bugs and things like that. So this is one of the releases that Joe Perez, one of our volunteers, did. They're just beautiful creatures. And it's fun to sit. The room I'm actually sitting in faces the vineyard, and you can actually see them swooping down throughout the usually later in the evening around dusk, doing their work, and just a wonderful circle of life out here.
Yeah, exactly. Just another holistic way to keep things natural. It's so cool. I want to mention something that just came in the news recently, and with COVID, it brought things, brought the concepts about. So I saw in the news the use of UV lights. So tell us about that and how you were using it in the winery, and then how you're translating that out into the vineyards. It's so cool.
Yeah, it is something where we've been using UV light to filter our water. We're on a well here, and as a water filtration system, the water passes through a UV light to kill viruses and bacteria. And it was that technology that when we saw during COVID that airlines and other industries were using UV light filters to clean the air to prevent the recirculation of viruses, that we installed that technology in our HVAC systems and portable units throughout the winery. And through doing a lot of reading, our founder, he's just an avid learner, loves to be a researcher. He came across some 20-year-old studies that were done by Cornell University, who has a phenomenal viticultural program. And there was a professor up there that essentially created a model of how you would use UV light technology in your vineyard. And he had schematics and drawings. And we were like, this has worked so well for us inside. Of course, it makes sense that, if the light passes through on the leaf or on the cluster at such a rate that it could kill the virus that really impacts us here in the Willamette Valley, and that's powdery mildew. And we use organic sulfur sprays. We spray every, 10 to 14 days throughout our vineyard. But what we found in that research is there's evidence that shows that this UV light deployed about the same frequency every 10 to 14 days can stop it, prevent the virus, and kill what's already there. And so the other night, while I was sleeping, we had a tractor driver put on the protective equipment and use this. It's just something that hitches onto our tractor trailer. It's very, very simple in design. It's almost UV light bulbs, almost like, think of like a tanning bed. And we run the grapevine canopy, we run it right on the outside, and it has to go at 2 miles per hour. So it's pretty slow, but it doesn't matter because it's taking place at night. So it's, and it can get through the vineyards. And it's something where we just see tremendous opportunity with this, that it could be, it could really reduce spraying in all of farming, become an even more sustainable way for wine grapes, but also row crops. And what we're trying to prove now is we're trying to show that it can be cheaper than conventional farming, so that we could really, revolutionize how, the things that go into our, the things we eat. So that's something that we're doing now, and we have plans. We have a goal to make it self-driving, so that it could take place at night and be operating throughout our almost 500 acres, while we're not here.
Yeah, it's so cool, and like you said, it has so many different aspects within within vineyards, but also in other industries too. It's amazing that nobody took that 20-year-old study and ran with it prior. So great on you guys and on Jim for doing the testing. It's so cool. So let's talk about a bit about harvest. So when do you anticipate harvest this year? You said this is about average this year, or are you running a little bit behind an average year?
So this is kind of back to normal. So,
Okay.
when I first started in the wine industry in 2008 and 9, it was really common to be starting harvest more in October. But as it's been getting warmer and warmer here in Oregon, we have had vintages start as early as August, and quite as a surprise. But kind of what we're seeing right now is we just entered veraison. So we're starting to see color change in the berries, and that signals the onset of ripening. So where the acids start to decrease and the sugars start to increase. And that signal, it tells us we're about 60 days away from picking.
Okay.
So we are definitely looking at, October, and could be, hopefully we get a dry fall season, because it could just be a phenomenal Oregon vintage because the yields are very, very low, about 40% down this year compared to average. So it's hopefully that means high quality, as the grapes are not having to do as much work to kind of ripen, and hopefully it means a lot of concentrated flavors. That's usually what happens when we have those lower yielding years here in Oregon.
All right. So we have something to fingers crossed and something to look forward to. Uh, well,
Yeah, there
in
just might not be a lot of it.
Oh, sure, there might not be as much. So what led to the smaller yields this year? Was it a lack of rain, or what was the factor there?
It all has to do with the timing around flowering. And it is such a short window of time that usually takes place around the first part of June. And it is very weather dependent. So vines are self-pollinating. So they don't rely on a bee. And so essentially they need it to be dry, relatively warm, for that pollination to occur. And something just happened in our vineyards where it was a very, very low fruit set, and it's nothing that it's all Mother Nature, nothing we can
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Okay. Well, you do the best with what you're given, obviously. So let's start talking about a few wines here because we are starting to run a bit shorter on time. So let's talk first about your estate Pinot Noir. Tell us a bit about that. I know it's a flagship. It's one of my
Mhm.
favorites, and our customers as well. So.
Yeah, for us, our estate is really the reason for being. We farm these sites, and we grow all of our Pinot estate grown that is bottle aged into our or barrel aged in our winery. But this estate is really a culmination of all of our efforts. So estate is sourced from our three estate vineyards, the estate, Elton, and Tualatin in this particular bottling in 2008, which is the current release. And I think the thing that I love about this wine is really kind of comes back to that sense of duty we have. Jim named Willamette Valley Vineyards before the appellation was even established. So we're grandfathered into using that name. But it holds a lot of responsibility in that I always feel we need to make a wine that is representative of the Willamette Valley appellation and what those kind of classic and signature aspects of those that is. And that's a wine that, does offer, fruit forward qualities, but also has a lot of our signature earth and spice and that balancing acidity, that classic Oregon acidity that keeps the wines lively and great in your cellar. And so that's what this bottling is. And it's just when I look at it, I'm so privileged to farm vineyards that are 1973, 1983. So these are old vines at this point, and I think the quality that we put in this bottling is something I'm always very, very proud of.
Oh, it's super great. Before I worked with Touton, I worked retail for 15 years, and yeah, I've sold that wine for 15 plus years. It's always phenomenal and consistent and highly rated and just respected. Like you said, it's almost the namesake of the appellation in my mind. So let's move on to the Chardonnay. So the estate Chardonnay as well. Those are obviously all estate grapes as well.
Yeah, so also really important that this bottling reflects the place. So we have incredible Chardonnay plantings. We have original Draper clone that came up with Oregon wine pioneer Bill Fuller when he planted Tualatin Estate. And they came from Louis Martini. And so that kind of has this, it's almost at this point developed and mutated into its own clone up there and how it's adapted to the cool climate. And then in the early 1990s, we had this wave of Dijon clones that we were able to plant in our estate vineyard and out at Elton. And, you know, Chardonnay is such a wonderful grape to work with in that it really has the sense of place comes through, but as a winemaker, you also get to, it's so easy to style. And so what we're trying to craft in this bottling is that Willamette Valley style, where you are getting some beautiful fruits, but you're also really working with texture and you're really working with that naturally vibrant acidity to create a wine that's very elegant and has a lot of movement, very food friendly. And just a kiss of oak. It's around 20% new French oak each year, really meant to just kind of lift the bottling, not mask and create kind of heavy oak notes. And it's just one where I'm so happy that Oregon Chardonnay is now on people's radar. And it's so fun to talk about and to have and to show people what else we can do here. So
Exactly. It's not just Pinot Noir. I've been
right.
trying to tell people on Oregon Chard, and now it's finally clicked. You're right. It's people have finally taken notice. And like you said, so fruit friendly, user friendly, just spectacular wines. Let's talk about something that I just think is fun and also just unique in how it's made,
Yeah.
particularly the Pinot Noir. So the whole cluster program is so cool. Tell us a bit about that and what that means, whole cluster and how it's made.
Sure. I mean, as we were just talking, estate, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, those are really wines that are dedicated to place. And when I think about whole cluster Pinot Noir, I really think about a wine dedicated to method. So taking inspiration from Cru Beaujolais, you know, using some carbonic maceration in whole cluster fermentations is how we go about making this wine. So everything we grow is hand harvested, so the clusters are intact. They come to the winery and they bypass all equipment, all machinery, and go right into a stainless steel tank to start that carbonic whole cluster fermentation. So the wine is just very fruit forward. It tastes just like a Pinot Noir grape tastes on the vine, and just very natural in that the fermentation, once you evacuate that oxygen, starts intraberry, literally exploding the skins. As the juice trickles down, it picks up the tannin from the stems in the skins. It also picks up color, aroma, and they're just essentially what you put into that tank is what you get out. And that's what I like. It's a very hands-off process. And it's meant to be consumed and enjoyed early. So it's always our first release of the year. We're on the 2019 vintage now, and it's just kind of that preview of the future Pinot Noirs that are to come. And then as we've just been innovating how to improve the quality of this wine over time, was born the innovation of the rosé. We had been working on racking off that early light pink juice to kind of concentrate the Pinot Noir. And, you know, as rosés were becoming just this quick rise to fame, we put it in its own bottling. So it's essentially free run juice of Pinot Noir, and it really creates just lovely, very delicate aromas and flavors and bright acidity that's preserved. So one of our fastest growing programs is the rosé and the whole cluster. They're just, for the price point in Oregon, you know, it's a beautiful bottling, and it's not a declassification. That's what I like to tell people. This is very, very intentional in how we make this. It's about the method.
These wines, I love them, especially in summer. You know, even the red Pinot Noir, you chill it down a bit. It's bright, it's fresh, it's vibrant, great aperitif. I just love these wines. You know, like you said, they're just such different wines from the estate line, but they both definitely have their place. And the price point of this is amazing too. So keep up the good work. I love these wines. This is always my introduction to people with Oregon wine. I'm, start here and then let's move on from that. But these wines are always excellent.
Thank you.
So we are getting short on time, but I want to try to cram in just a couple more things real quick. You are one of the few wineries that I know of in the United States that's certified vegan for some of your bottling. So tell us about that and how that works.
Yeah, we started just getting a lot of calls as people were asking us if our wines were vegan, and many of them were and are, and it was something where in Oregon we find people are kind of usually forward in trends of eating preferences and dietary preferences. And so it was very, very easy to look at our methods of production and to, for our Pinot Noirs, they were always certified vegan. For our white wines, we were using a filter that used cellulose, which comes from sugar cane. And that process actually isn't a vegan process. So we had to change out some equipment in order to certify some of our white wines and rosé. But really the thing about it is I believe that, it was really the going through the process and the certification process that took a great deal of effort in proving that no animal byproducts go into the making of our wines. And there's that purity that we put on. And I think we're one of the first to add it to the label. And we like to be very, very transparent. We believe in truth in labeling. When you turn over a Willamette Valley Vineyards wine, there's so much information that our font size is down to 7 points. You can almost hardly read it anymore. But we want people to make informed decisions. And we want people to know, in how we go about making the wine. So certified vegan is now on our estate Pinot Noir, our whole cluster wines, and many, many offerings that you can get here at the winery as well.
It's so cool. And people don't realize, for those who are wondering, how could a wine not be vegan? Sometimes they use egg whites, to fine a wine, to make it not so cloudy, and different animal byproducts. So
right. They're very traditional methods. Some sound kind of obscure, but we're fortunate in that there's so much modern technology that you can kind of get past some of those traditional uses and really make a vegan wine quite easily.
Yeah, exactly. And just to mention it real quickly, Salmon Safe, Live certified. I know Jim was instrumental in creating the Live certification for sustainability. And quickly tell us about Salmon Safe and what that means, because I feel like most people don't know what that means unless you live in Oregon.
Yes, yeah. Here in Oregon, it was it's a certification that was born here, and our waterways that carry our native salmons are very, very special to us and very, very important for us to protect. So what we're pledging and committing here is that anything we use in our vineyard and our winery, all the way to our hospitality, does not pollute or contaminate any waterway here in Oregon, so that our natural habitats are sustained and can even repopulate, as there's been a lot of threat to the native salmon and steelhead here. And so that's something that's really important, as everything we use on the vineyard is pretty much just an organic sulfur spray is the only thing that goes on our vines. And we do a lot of natural composting. We have one vineyard farmed biodynamically, and it's a practice I just thank you. And I'm just a true believer in farming with that whole farm approach, and anything you put onto your vines is created on the site. And here is our viticulturist Clay and I in the fall stuffing cow horns, and that manure that is stuffed in those cow horns essentially ferments and creates to kind of distill it down in simple terms, a probiotic, a vitamin of sorts that we spray back onto the vines the following spring and through the summer. And it's just, kind of getting back to really paying attention to soil health and creating a balanced ecosystem. And that's something where, a grapevine, when you plant it, it doesn't move. it is in that soil its whole life. And in order to keep the quality and to keep it thriving, you have to be building the soil health, because we are taking a crop away from it each year. We're taking things out of the earth. And so we have to focus on putting them back. And
Yeah, putting it back.
yeah, really, really
No,
focused on that.
yeah, exactly. People don't realize that, how difficult farming is. And like you said, you have to give back to the soil if you want the best results. So we've already run over, but on this, I wanted to just end with the fact that the estate is really, there's a lot of, female influence in the winery and in the estate, which I think is so cool. So tell us just a bit about that, and kind of just the mentality of how you're managing the estate.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from values that our founder started with and have passed down, where he really he gives everyone the opportunity to rise in our organization. You'll find a lot of young people. You'll find people that are maybe in their second careers and kind of rebirthing themselves. But you also find a lot of rising women, and we're about 55% women, which is pretty uncommon in the wine industry as a whole, but not that uncommon anymore in Oregon, which is so amazing to see how our state has just kind of taken on some of these diversity efforts and inclusive efforts pretty early on. Like a lot of my role models, Susan Sokol-Blosser, Nancy Ponzi, these were women that led the way back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s here in Oregon. So we had a platform to go off of, and it just is, pictured here is our associate winemaker, Gabby, on the far left, Betty O'Brien, who is the founder of Elton Vineyard. So back in 1983, really paving the way, and myself. And I mean, this is just a small selection. We have I actually had a great, we do reviews here in the spring, and I had on the peer feedback forum, someone write, maybe you should actually hire some more men here. And it just made me laugh, because I don't think that that's usually the case in the alcohol beverage industry, to have someone give that feedback. But
Exactly.
we just find women are just make tremendous teammates and are very, very passionate, and we're able to hopefully really provide for the needs that they have for their families and their lives, to make it a career for them.
I know you guys are just leading the way in so many things, in women in wine, in sustainability, in new methods and processes. It's just cool. I could talk to you for literally probably another hour or two. There's so many things you guys are doing, but today we're gonna have to wrap it up. Christine, again, thank you so much. It was really insightful, and just great to get just the hands-on direct information from you. You can look at the website. Your website's great, by the way. I love your website. There's so much information on your website. So your website's excellent, but it's just even better hearing from you. So keep up the great work, amazing work, and good luck in the 2020 harvest. And it's just it's a pleasure for Touton to work with and distribute your wines. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much. I, around this time last year, got to travel to New York and meet the Touton team. And it was an incredible experience to be in a room of professionals that are just dedicated to storytelling. And I got so much energy from that. And we love being represented. And we love what your family-based distributor stands for. So thank you for selecting us and to include us in your portfolio.
For sure. So again, thank you. I think for that, we're going to have to sign off today. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And until next time, have a great day, Christine.
Thank you.
Cheers.